It is 2:47 in the morning on March 1st, 2026, and I am sitting at the river. I am outside right now. It is cold. The weeping willows are all around me, and their branches are hanging down into the water and brushing my face every time the wind moves through them. I didn't plan to be here. I was in bed. I had been in bed for about an hour trying to sleep, and then something happened that I cannot fully explain, except to say that something pulled me up and out of the house and down the hill to this bank. And I've been sitting here for almost 2 hours now, shaking, weeping, holding my phone with hands that won't quite stop trembling. I have to tell you what happened tonight. I know it's almost 3 in the morning. I know most of you are asleep and you'll find this later and you'll have to decide whether to keep watching. I know some of you are going to click away because this sounds exactly like every dramatic video you have scrolled past before, and I understand that. I really do. But some of you are going to feel something right now in your chest, a kind of warmth or weight or recognition, and if you feel that, please, do not look away. Because what Jesus showed me tonight under these weeping willows by this river is something I do not have the right to keep to myself. I tried to convince myself I could wait until morning. I tried to lie back down, and I couldn't do it. I could not stay quiet. So I want you to know who you are before I tell you what I was shown. Because he told me specifically who this message was for. He said, "This is not for everyone. Not because everyone doesn't matter, but because not everyone is ready to hear it yet. The ones who will hear it are the ones who have been sensing something, not a specific thing necessarily, just a feeling, like the world is moving toward something, like the ground beneath regular life is shifting in ways that don't quite make the news, like there is something enormous just outside your field of vision that you have not been able to name. If that is you, if you have felt that feeling, you were meant to be here right now at whatever time it is, wherever you are watching this. He knew you would find it. He always knows. Now, I need to tell you something before I go further. I am not someone who does this regularly. I am not someone who posts revelations and prophetic words all the time. I've been skeptical of that kind of content, honestly. I've watched those videos and wondered about the people making them, whether they really experienced what they claimed, whether the urgency was manufactured. So I want you to hold that about me going in. I came to this reluctantly. I am telling you this because I was told to tell you, not because I am comfortable with it. And there is something about knowing that the messenger is uncomfortable that I think might matter to some of you. Because he said to me, I am not sending the polished ones tonight. I am sending the reluctant ones, the ones who will not enjoy this, the ones who will shake the whole time. I have been coming to this spot by the river for about 3 years now. There is a bend in the bank here where the weeping willows are especially thick and they hang all the way down to the water, and when you stand underneath them, you feel enclosed, private, like the rest of the world has stepped back. I come here when I am overwhelmed. I come here when I can't think anymore and I need to just be somewhere quiet with God. It has always felt significant to me in a way I couldn't articulate, like the place was waiting for something, like I was waiting for something every time I came here and I didn't know what. I remember coming here last spring during a season where everything in my life felt uncertain. I remember sitting on the same bank and looking out at the water and saying out loud, I don't know what is coming. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. I just need you to know that I am here and I am listening. And nothing dramatic happened that day. The river just kept moving. The willows just kept swaying. And I went home. But something about that moment stayed with me, like a stone dropped in water that keeps sending out rings long after the stone is gone. And I think now, looking back, that moment was a preparation. That moment was practice. That was him teaching me to come here and be still, so that when tonight came, I would already know how. Tonight I know what. I had been praying for about 20 minutes, not out loud, just sitting with my hands open and my eyes closed, listening to the river move, asking God to speak if he had anything to say. I wasn't expecting anything dramatic. I was just trying to get quiet enough to hear. And then the temperature changed. The air around me went very still and very cold, and all the sound from the river dropped away. The willows stopped moving. Everything stopped. And when I opened my eyes, the space in front of me was full in a way that I don't have words for, full and present and charged with something that made every hair on my body stand up. And I knew with a certainty that was in my bones and not just in my brain, that Jesus was standing right there with me, right there at the bank of this river under these weeping willows at 2:47 in the morning. And I just started crying. I couldn't help it, not grief crying, more like pressure release crying, like something that had been held in my chest for a very long time suddenly had somewhere to go. And he let me cry for a while. He didn't rush past it. He just waited. And then he said, I need you to tell them what you see. And I said, I'm not the right person. I said, I'm not qualified for this. And I'm not someone who people are going to take seriously. And there are people who are better at explaining spiritual things than I am. And he said quietly, that is exactly why I chose you. And then he said, I am going to show you 7 things, 7 signs. And when I have shown you all 7, you are going to tell the people, all 7 of them. You are not going to leave any of them out, not even the hard ones. And so that is what I am doing right now. 7 signs. That is what I was shown tonight. And I am going to take you through all 7 of them. They build on each other. They are meant to be heard in sequence. So please stay with me through all of them, because the 7th one, the last one he showed me, is the one that made me cry out loud here alone by the river. It is the one that changes the meaning of everything else. Do not skip ahead. Do not leave before we get there. You will miss everything if you do. Let me tell you the first sign. He took my vision somewhere else. Not here to this river. Somewhere elevated, like I was looking down at a city from a great height, a city I couldn't name, that could have been any city in the world, a vast spread of buildings and roads and light. And above the city there was the sun, and I looked at the sun the way you can look at it in a vision, without it blinding you, and I saw something in it that I have no natural category for. Not an eclipse, not a solar flare in any form I recognized, something in the pattern of the light, something in the way the edges of the sun were behaving, something that was not quite right and not quite natural and not quite something science had already named. And he said to me, the first sign will appear in the sun, and most people will explain it away. They will find a scientific name for it. They will put it on the news and give it a category, and within 48 hours the world will have moved on. But the ones whose eyes are open, the ones who have been watching, they will feel it in their bones. And I saw in the vision a woman standing in a parking lot looking up, just standing there with her hand over her mouth, and her face was not afraid. Her face was the face of someone who recognized something they had been told to watch for. She knew. She felt it. And right next to her was a man on his phone reading the headline about the event, the scientific explanation, the reassuring article that told him there was nothing to worry about, and he was already scrolling to the next thing. He didn't even look up. He said, that is the first sign. Watch the sun. When you see the thing in the sun that cannot quite be explained away, even though the explanations will be offered, that is the beginning of the count. The 3 days are closer than people believe, and the first sign is what starts the clock. So that is the first thing. And I want to pause here and ask you a question. When did you last look up? When did you last step outside and just, stand there for a moment and look at the sky and ask, is there anything happening up there that I should be paying attention to? Because we are going to come back to that question. And the answer matters more than you might think right now. The second sign he showed me was in the water, and this one landed differently for me because I was literally sitting next to a river when he showed it. He said the second sign will come in the waters, not in floods necessarily, not in the kind of dramatic water event that makes every headline. He said the waters will speak. And I saw in the vision rivers and lakes and coastal areas and shorelines where the water was doing something it had not done before, not catastrophically, not in a way that would alarm anyone who wasn't paying attention, but in a way that the people who had been near those waters all their lives would notice. Fishermen who had worked the same waters for 20 years noticing that something was off. Families who had swum in the same lake every summer since childhood, noticing that the water was different in a way they couldn't quite name. He said the waters are a warning bell. They ring before the storm, not loudly, not dramatically, but those who know the waters, they will hear the bell. And I thought about this river beside me, the way it went so completely still and silent just before he appeared to me tonight. Like even the river knew what was coming and quieted itself out of reverence. And I understood something in that moment that I hadn't understood before. Creation responds before the event arrives. The water knows, the earth knows, and it speaks to those who are listening in the language of subtle wrongness, of slight displacement, of things being just a little off from what they should be. Pay attention to the waters near you. That is all I can tell you. Pay attention to what you know and what feels different about it. Now I need to take a breath here because I want to ask you something before I go further into the signs. I want to ask you about your own watchfulness. Are you the kind of person who is paying attention to the world around you right now? Not in a fearful way, in a genuinely awake and observant way, because there is a crucial difference between watching with fear and watching with readiness. Fear makes you freeze. Fear makes you catastrophize every piece of news and spiral into anxiety. Readiness is something completely different. Readiness is calm. Readiness is the person in the parking lot with her hand over her mouth who looks up and recognizes and then goes home and does what they need to do. I want you to be that person. Everything I'm going to tell you tonight is about helping you become that person if you aren't already. The third sign, this one I did not expect, and it hit me somewhere very specific when he showed me. He said, the third sign will not be in the sky or the water, it will be in the silence of people who used to speak. And I asked him what he meant by that, and he said, watch for the voices that have been warning, watch the ones who have been sounding alarms from wherever they sound them, and then watch for when they go quiet, not because they gave up, not because they changed their minds or decided the warning wasn't real, but because the season for warning has passed and the season for action has arrived. When the watchmen go quiet, the thing they were warning about is no longer on the horizon, it is at the door. And I saw in the vision a whole landscape of voices, people speaking from small screens and from pulpits and from street corners and from pages and podcasts and every channel of communication you can imagine, voices warning about what was coming. And I watched as those voices began, one at a time, to fall silent, not dramatically, not with a farewell message or a final broadcast, just one voice would grow quiet, and then another, like candles in a dark room being gently cupped by a hand. Not blown out, just shielded. One, then another, until the room was dim. And the people who had been listening to those voices, or not listening, or half listening while doing other things, they didn't notice at first. Life kept moving, phones kept buzzing, content kept flowing, and the silence of the watchman was swallowed up in everything else. And he said to me, when the watchmen go quiet, that is the sign that the darkness is no longer far off. Those who see it coming have stopped warning and started preparing, and the gap between their silence and the darkness arriving is shorter than most people would be comfortable knowing. I sat with that for a long time by this river. I'm still sitting with it, honestly, because this is not about any specific person or platform or community. It is a question for all of us. Have I been paying attention to who has gone quiet? Have I noticed the voices that used to speak regularly about what was coming and have now grown still? And instead of asking why they stopped, have I asked myself what they know that I don't? I mean, be aware. That is all. Just be aware. The fourth sign, and this one he described to me in a way that I want to get exactly right because the specifics matter. He said the fourth sign will be in the hearts of families, not in governments, not in global events you can track on a news feed or a market screen, in the most private and personal place of all, the household, the space between four walls where people who share a life together are either honest with each other or not. He said, in the days before the darkness, what has been buried will surface. What has been hidden will seek the light, not because people decide to be honest, but because the pressure of what is coming will push everything that was being held down back up to the top. And I saw in the vision households. Some of them were not ready for what surfaced. Old anger came up, grief that had never been processed, fear that had been living in the basement of a marriage or a family for years, well fed in the dark, and now suddenly in the room with everyone. And some of those households collapsed under the weight of what surfaced, not because the truth was too much to bear, but because they had never practiced bearing it together and they didn't know how. And then I saw other households, and in those households there was a different kind of conversation happening, not easy, not comfortable, but present, people sitting with each other and going into the buried places together, choosing to bring up the hard things before the hard things forced their way up, and there was a solidity in those households that I could feel even in the vision, a groundedness, like a tree with its roots very deep. And he said, the darkness cannot break what has already been made honest. He said it like a law, a certainty, not a hope, a fact. So I want to ask you about your household right now. Is there something buried? Is there something between you and someone under your roof that you have been putting off addressing? Is there a conversation you have had the first 3 words of 100 times in your head and then not said out loud? Because the fourth sign is not coming. It is here. It is already beginning in many households all over the world. And the ones that will come through the 3 days of darkness anchored and unbroken are the ones who are doing the work right now, tonight, this week, before the darkness arrives. Do the work, please. While there is still time to do it with intention and not just reaction, I need to take another breath. The fifth and sixth signs, these are where the intensity starts to really build, and then the seventh. And I have been trying to work up the courage to say the seventh out loud since the moment he showed it to me. And I'm going to get there, I promise. Stay with me. The fifth sign was in the church, and I want to be careful here because the way he spoke about this was not angry. It was grieving. It was the grief of someone who had given everything and was watching what he gave being slowly set aside. He showed me gatherings. He showed me communities of faith. He showed me buildings full of people who carried his name. And there was something about the way he looked at them that broke something in me, because it was unmistakably love. All of it was love. Even the grief was love. He said, "The fifth sign will be when those who carry my name choose comfort over calling." And I saw in the vision what that looked like. I saw messages that had been trimmed of their edges, truths that people needed to hear replaced by things that made everyone feel good and warm and approved of. Hard questions softened into things that didn't require anyone to change. And the people leaving those gatherings unchanged, week after week, month after month, going out into the world no different than when they came in, and the world no different for them having been there. And he said, "I am not angry at them." He said it quietly and clearly and in a way that made it impossible to doubt. He said, "I am heartbroken because I gave them the light. I gave them the thing the world was starving for, and they chose to dim it, not out of malice, out of fear, out of not wanting to cause discomfort, out of wanting to be liked." And then he said something that I have not been able to stop thinking about since. He said, "When you see the light being dimmed inside the walls that were built to hold it, understand that the darkness outside those walls has already arrived. The dimming is not the cause, it is the response. The church dims its light because it can already feel the darkness pressing in, and the tragedy is that the darkness presses harder when the light gets smaller." And, I want to say something here that I think is important. This is not an indictment of any specific denomination or tradition or congregation. This is a mirror. It is for every one of us who carries any kind of light and has to ask ourselves, when did I last let it burn as bright as it can? When did I last say the true thing even though it was going to cost me something? When did I last trust that the light I carry is actually needed and not just tolerated? Because I can ask myself those questions. I have to ask myself those questions. And so do you, the sixth sign. And when he showed me this one, I actually cried out. I couldn't help it. I said something out loud here alone by the river and startled the ducks in the water with the sound of my voice. He said, "The sixth sign will be a reversal. You will see the children acting ancient and the adults acting like children." He said this not with judgment, but with something I can only describe as wonder. Like even he found it worth noting. He said, "I have been speaking to the young ones, because the young ones still listen without requiring the message to be convenient. They have not yet learned to filter what they hear through what they need to be true. They just receive. And I have been speaking into that openness, and I saw in the vision young people, teenagers, children, some of them quite young, and there was a weight on them that was not oppressive but was serious, a gravity, a clarity about what was real and what mattered. Some of them were praying alone in their rooms. Some of them were reading with a hunger I recognized. Some of them were having conversations with each other about things that most adults around them would have dismissed as too heavy for children. And their parents, in the vision, many of their parents were somewhere else, not physically somewhere else necessarily, but internally, distracted by the noise of everything, arguing about things that in the light of what was coming seemed almost impossibly small, scrolling, consuming, avoiding. Not bad people, not evil people, just people who had been so thoroughly trained by the world to keep moving that they had stopped being still enough to hear what their own children were hearing. And Jesus said to me, "Tell the parents, tell every parent who watches this, if your child has been asking about spiritual things lately, if they have been bringing up questions about eternity or faith or what is real, if they have been quieter than usual or more serious than their age would normally call for, do not dismiss that. Do not laugh it off. Do not steer the conversation somewhere lighter because you don't know how to answer. Because what I have been placing in your children, I place there for a reason. And one of the reasons is so they could be a light to you. The sixth sign is already visible. Look at the young people in your life. Ask them what they have been thinking about. And then, whatever you do, actually listen to the answer. Okay, I have to tell you the seventh thing now. I have to. I have been building toward it, and I know some of you have felt it coming, and I have been finding the courage to say it out loud since the moment it was shown to me, and the moment has come. He said to me, "There is one more thing," and there was something different in the way he said it, something that made me go very still, the way you go still when you sense that what comes next is going to rearrange something in you. And I said, "I'm ready." And he looked at me with those eyes that I have no adequate words for, eyes that have seen everything about you and have decided to love you anyway. And he said, "The darkness that is coming is not a punishment." He said it and paused. He let it sit there. And then he said it again, in case I had not fully heard it the first time. The darkness that is coming is not a punishment. And then he said, it is a mercy. And I didn't know what to do with that. I said, how? I said, how is darkness a mercy? How is 3 days of darkness a mercy for the people who are afraid, for the people who are not ready, for the people who don't understand what is happening? And he looked at me with such tenderness that I started crying again before he even answered. And he said, I am giving the world 3 days to be still, 3 days without the noise, 3 days without the motion, 3 days where every distraction is quieted and every screen is dark, and every person on the face of the earth has to sit with themselves and with whatever silence they have been running from. He said, I am not turning off the lights to frighten them. I am turning off the lights so they will finally look for me. And I want you to think about that for a moment. Think about the person you know, maybe it is you, who has been so buried in noise and motion and content and the endless consuming of everything that they have not been genuinely still in years. Think about the person who fills every silent moment with something: music, scrolling, television, podcasts, anything to keep the quiet from settling in. Think about the person who is afraid of what they would hear if they went actually quiet. The 3 days are for that person. The darkness is a gift for the person who has never been able to stop long enough to hear his voice. You are not forgotten. You are not abandoned. You are being pursued. And the darkness, when it comes, is the pursuit. And he said to me, tell them this. The ones who have been watching, the ones who recognize the signs as I showed them to you tonight, they will not be overcome by the darkness. They will be ready for it. They will know what it is and they will know what to do in it. But the ones who have not been watching, the ones the darkness surprises, even for them it is not a punishment, it is an invitation, the most unavoidable invitation he has ever extended. Because you cannot ignore 3 days of darkness. You cannot scroll past it. You cannot find the scientific headline and move on to the next thing. It will be there, and in it he will be there. And every single person who wants to find him will be able to. He said, I have not given up on any of them, not one. And something in me shattered at that, something that I didn't know was still hardened or braced or defended, just shattered, because I think some part of me had been afraid that the warning was the whole message, that the darkness was the final word. And it is not. It is not the final word. It is a chapter in a story that ends with him. And then he said one more thing about the darkness that I want to make sure you hear. He said, the 3 days will feel different to different people based on what they brought into them. He said, the person who enters the darkness already anchored will experience it as a kind of holy retreat, quiet, clarifying, like a long, deep breath they didn't know they needed. He said, the person who enters the darkness unprepared will experience it as a stripping away. And he said, even the stripping is love, because what gets stripped in the darkness is everything that was standing between that person and the truth about who they are and who I am. He said, no one will leave the 3 days the same as they entered. No one. And that, he said, is entirely intentional. I am not preserving the world that enters the darkness. I am preparing the world that emerges from it. So what do you do with all of this? I want to be very specific with you now because some of you are sitting there with a practical question underneath all the emotion. Okay, what do I actually do? What do I do today, this week, in the time between now and whenever this comes? Let me tell you what he said about that. He said, settle your hearts before the darkness, not during it. The preparation that holds you in the 3 days is the preparation you do in the light. An anchor dropped in a storm is too late. You drop the anchor before the storm. You drop it when the water is calm, and you have the time and the clarity to do it right. So what does dropping the anchor actually look like? It looks like going back through the 6 signs I described tonight and asking yourself honestly where you are with each one, not academically, personally. Have you seen the sign in the sun and explained it away? Have you noticed the waters speaking and ignored them? Have you seen the watchman going quiet and not asked yourself why? Is there something buried in your household that needs to surface before it gets forced up? Have you been dimming your light because you were afraid? And what are the young people around you carrying that you have not yet asked about? These are not rhetorical questions. He told me to tell you to actually sit with them, actually write them down if you need to, actually have the conversation with someone you trust about what your honest answers are. Because this is not content to consume and move on from. This is a mirror being held up, and what you do with what you see in the mirror is what matters. The preparation also looks like this. It looks like quieting yourself now in small amounts before the silence is imposed on you. 10 minutes in the morning without your phone, a walk without earbuds, a meal without a screen, small doses of silence while you still choose them. Because the person who has been practicing stillness will be far more anchored in forced stillness than the person for whom silence is unfamiliar and frightening. Practice now, while you can choose it, before it is chosen for you. It looks like the household conversation. I know I have come back to this more than once tonight, but I cannot emphasize it enough. The household conversation, the one you have been avoiding, have it. Not perfectly, not with all the right words planned out. Just have it. Be in the room with the person and say the true thing, because what he told me is that the households that will be anchored in the 3 days are the households that are currently choosing honesty over comfort. The cost of honesty now is discomfort. The cost of avoiding it then is something much harder. It looks like examining what you actually believe about who he is, not performing a belief, not repeating words you have said since childhood without thinking about them, actually sitting with the question of whether you believe he is real, whether you believe he loves you, whether you believe the darkness is held in his hands and not just falling on its own, because that belief, held personally and genuinely, and not just institutionally, is the thing that turns 3 days of darkness into 3 days of encounter instead of 3 days of terror. And if you are not there yet, if you are someone who is genuinely not sure, if you are someone who has been skeptical of all of this, who found this video by accident, or maybe not by accident, who is watching with one part of you curious and one part of you resistant, he knows. He knows exactly where you are. He told me to tell the skeptics specifically that the 3 days are not designed for the ones who already know him. The ones who already know him will be fine. The 3 days are the last great love offering extended to everyone who has not yet been able to believe. You are not outside the reach of it. You are, in a very real sense, the reason for it. And I want to stay with the skeptics for one more moment because I was one of you not so long ago. I know what it feels like to watch someone talk with urgency about a vision or a dream or a revelation and feel the resistance rising in you. The part of your brain that says this is manipulation, this is a performance, this is someone using language about God to manufacture feeling in people who want to feel something. I know that voice. I have that voice. It was loud in me for years. And I am not going to try to argue with that voice tonight, because I don't think argument is what moves it. What moves it is encounter. And here is what I know. You do not need to believe everything I told you tonight to do the one thing that matters most. You do not need to have your theology sorted or your doubts resolved or your history with religion worked through. You just need to be willing to be still for 3 days when the darkness comes and to ask with whatever sincerity you have if there is anyone there. That is it. That is the whole thing. And I believe with everything in me that if you ask that question in that silence, you will get an answer that no one can take from you. Let me pray with you now. Not a polished prayer, not a formal prayer, just real words from a person sitting at a river in the middle of the night who has been given something too big to hold and is trying to pass it along faithfully. If you want to join me, put your hand on your chest for a second. Just feel your own heartbeat and say these words with me in whatever way feels right, out loud or silently. He hears both. Say, Jesus, I hear you tonight. I don't have everything figured out and I'm not sure about everything, but I hear you. I want to be ready. I want my household to be ready. I want to be someone who is watching. Come into the places I have kept you out of. Bring light to what I have been keeping in the dark. I choose to anchor myself to you before the darkness comes. I choose you now, in this moment, with whatever faith I have, even if it is small, even if it is new. I choose you. Amen. If you said that, I need you to know something has changed, not in your circumstances, not necessarily in how you feel right now this moment, but in something that matters more than both of those things. You dropped an anchor tonight. And anchors hold even when you can't feel them holding, especially then. And I want to say something about what happens after a prayer like that, because sometimes people pray and then feel nothing, and then they conclude that nothing happened. And I want to gently challenge that. The feeling is not the prayer. The feeling is not the faith. The decision is the faith. The turning is the faith. The moment of choosing, however small and quiet and undramatic it felt, that is the thing that counts. Faith is not an emotion that overtakes you. Faith is a direction you choose to face. And if you chose to face him tonight, even with a little bit of turning, even with a prayer that felt small or uncertain, that counts. He saw it. He received it. And he is working with it right now in ways you are not yet equipped to see. Now let me say something to the people who feel that pull to share this. And I think some of you feel it right now. That same pull that dragged me out of bed and down to this river in the middle of the night. If you feel the pull to send this to someone, please listen to it. You already know who. Their face has already come to your mind while I was talking. Maybe it came up during the household sign. Maybe it came up during the sign about the young people. Maybe it came up right at the beginning when I described who this message was for. You know who it is. Send it to them. You don't need a long explanation. You don't need to convince them to watch it. Just say, I thought of you when I saw this. That is enough. Let him do the rest of it. Because he told me tonight that this message does not travel by algorithm alone. It travels by relationship, person to person, heart to heart, the way things that actually matter have always traveled. One person saying to another person, I saw something tonight and I thought of you. That is the mechanism. That is how it spreads. And you sending this to the one person whose face is in your mind right now might be the thing that gives them the warning they need, the time to settle their anchor before the darkness comes. Do not underestimate what one small obedient action can do. It has never been nothing. Not once in the history of the world has one person reaching for another person been nothing. And I want to say something about the people who will push back when you send it, because some of them will. Some of them will roll their eyes or send you a skeptical response or tell you they don't believe in this kind of thing. And that is okay. Send it anyway. You are not responsible for how they receive it. You are only responsible for whether you sent it. Plant the seed and let him water it. That is all you have to do. And I want you to think about this. The person who pushes back the hardest is often the person who felt something they were not ready to feel. That defensiveness is not indifference. It is proximity. Send it. Let him work with it from there. Now let me take a moment and summarize what I was shown tonight, because I want to make sure none of it slips past you before you close this and go back to your life. There are 7 signs that precede the 3 days of darkness. The first is a sign in the sun that most people will explain away. The second is a speaking in the waters, a subtle wrongness that those who know the waters will feel. The third is the silence of the watchmen, the voices that were warning going quiet because the season for warning has ended. The fourth is in the household, the surfacing of what was buried in families and marriages and the walls between people who share a life. The fifth is the dimming of light inside the church, the choosing of comfort over calling. The sixth is the reversal of the generations, children who see what adults are missing. And the seventh, the one that changes all the others, is the truth that the darkness itself is not a punishment, it is a mercy. It is 3 days of silence extended by a God who refuses to stop reaching. These 7 signs are not meant to be filed away, they are meant to be lived against. They are meant to be the lens through which you look at the world around you from today forward. And when you start to see them, and I believe you will see them, I believe some of you are already seeing them, I want you to feel not dread but recognition. The recognition of someone who was warned. The recognition of someone who is not surprised because they were paying attention. That recognition is itself a kind of grace. It means you are not caught off guard. It means you have time to act on what you know. I want to say one more thing before I close, and it is this. I am aware that there are people watching this who have lost someone they loved who did not get to hear a warning before their darkness came. And I felt, right before I came to this last part, I felt like he wanted me to speak to those people specifically, the ones who are watching this with grief mixed in, the ones who are thinking about a face right now that they can no longer reach. He said, tell them I am not finished. He said it with a certainty that I felt in my chest. He said, the mercy extends further than human understanding can calculate. He said, you do not know everything I have done in the moments you did not see. And I want you to hold that. I cannot explain it more than that. I don't have the theology to explain it more than that. But I felt him say it, and I am saying it to you. He is not finished. Not with the ones you love, not with the darkness they walked into. He is not finished. It is now 3:31 in the morning on March 1st, 2026. I have been at this river under these weeping willows for almost 3 hours. My hands are steadier than they were, but I am cold and I am tired and I want to find the right word for this. I feel emptied in a way that isn't empty. Like something was poured through me tonight and now there's a kind of clean space where the urgency was. A quiet, a good quiet. The river is moving again beside me. The willows are moving in the wind. Everything is back to its normal sound and motion. And I am just here. A person sitting on a riverbank in the middle of the night who was given something too big to hold and was asked to pass it along. I want to leave you with this. Because I do not want the last thing you carry from tonight to be fear or dread or a heavy weight that you don't know what to do with. He did not send me to this river at 3 in the morning to burden you. He sent me because he loves you. Every part of what he showed me tonight was soaked in love. The urgency was love. The warning was love. The signs were love. Even the darkness is love. He is not a God who abandons. He is a God who relentlessly pursues. And what is coming, whenever it arrives in its fullness, is part of an old and enormous pursuit that he has been conducting since before you were born. He is coming after every person on this earth, every single one. So if you are feeling far from him tonight, if you feel like this message maybe wasn't meant for you because you have been gone too long, or you have made too many wrong turns, or the distance between you and anything holy feels unbridgeable right now, he told me to tell you. He told me specifically to say this to the ones who feel too far gone. He said the 3 days are designed with them in mind. The darkness is a gift wrapped in their name. You are not an afterthought in this story. You are not on the margins of it. You are, in his mind, the reason for it. Watch the sun, watch the waters, watch for the silence of the watchman. Look inside your household and choose honesty now. Guard the light you carry and let it burn as bright as it can. Listen to the young people around you. They are carrying something. Ask them what. And settle your heart before the darkness comes, because the anchor you choose now, in the light, is the one that holds you when you cannot see your hand in front of your face. I will be back. There is more from tonight that I am still sitting with, and I want to be responsible with it before I bring it to you. But I will come back, and when I do, I want to hear from you. I want to hear what you saw when you looked honestly at the 6 signs. I want to hear about the conversation you finally had. I want to hear about the young person you finally asked and what they told you. I want to hear about the anchor you dropped and what it felt like to drop it, because this is not a broadcast. This is not me sending something down to you from somewhere elevated. We are doing this together, all of us, side by side, figuring out how to be ready together. March 1st, 2026, 3:31 in the morning. The willows are still and the river is moving, and I'm going to sit here for a few more minutes before I walk back up the hill and go home. Thank you for staying. Thank you for not scrolling past. Thank you for being the kind of person who stops when something pulls at them. He saw you stop. He always does. And he is not finished with you, not even close. One last thing. I know some of you are going to come back to this. You are going to watch it again when the doubts come in the morning, and the doubts will come. That is normal. That is healthy even. Bring your doubts back here. Let them sit with the river and the willows and the 2:47 in the morning, and the trembling and the certainty that I cannot manufacture at 3 in the morning when I am cold and tired and asking nothing from you. Let the doubts sit with all of that, and then ask yourself honestly what you think. Because I am not asking you to bypass your mind, I am asking you to engage it fully. And I believe that if you do, if you bring your full and honest self to this question, you are going to find that the pull you felt when you stopped scrolling was not nothing. It was not nothing, and it is worth following wherever it leads.